We begin with a mixed decision on coronavirus booster shots from the FDA. An advisory committee debated the issue Friday, and it ultimately voted against a third dose of the Pfizer vaccine for most Americans. But it did endorse boosters for certain at-risk populations. The Biden administration was set to begin a mass rollout of booster shots on Monday. Jonathan Vigliotti begins our coverage from Los Angeles.
After a day of intense debate, an FDA advisory committee voted 16-2 against recommending approval to begin administering Pfizer's booster shot to those 16 and older.
I don't think a booster dose is going to significantly contribute to controlling the pandemic.
But the panel did unanimously recommend boosters for people 65 and older, frontline workers, and those at risk of severe COVID.
The science on this is pretty clear to me that vulnerable people who are older, chronic disease, immunocompromised, those people need a third shot.
Up next, the FDA will review the committee's recommendations. Then the CDC will have the final say. But today's recommendation upends the Biden administration's plan to roll out boosters on Monday.
Do you think that the White House's messaging here has added to the confusion surrounding boosters?
Explaining why and how most vaccines we give are at least 3 doses, and this will follow the same pattern, and that could have better set expectations.
Government officials and medical experts presented in-depth data to the committee, including findings out of Israel indicating boosters are effective in reducing risk of severe illness in high-risk age groups. However, members felt there wasn't enough evidence to support boosters for younger people.
Do you worry that this debate over boosters is going to scare off those who are on the fence about getting vaccines in the first place?
It absolutely will.
Medical experts say their primary fear now is this heated, ongoing booster debate will have lasting consequences.
I mean, I think the lack of clear messaging is certainly going to confuse people, and it's going to make it harder for some people to get that third shot if they need it, or maybe even some people their first shot.
Dr. Jha, if a booster was offered to you in the next coming weeks, would you take it?
No, I'm 50 years old. I'm relatively healthy, thank goodness. I would not take it right now, but my elderly parents, absolutely.
And the FDA will make a decision on boosters early next week. The agency is not required to follow the advice of the committee, but Lana, oftentimes they do.
Yeah. All right, Jonathan, thank you. For more on this decision, I want to bring in emergency physician Dr. Hilary Fairbrother. Dr. Fairbrother, what's your reaction to the FDA panel's decision to reject Pfizer's COVID booster for the general public?
I think they're doing the best that they can with the data that they have. And that's really hard for all of us to process because the data is not clear and the science is not clear. And I think this 16-2 vote that we saw with the FDA is really, it's really just scientists doing the best that they can with the data that they have and moving forward in the most responsible fashion that they can. So that's my interpretation of their decision.
But the panel did, in fact, endorse booster shots for those over 65 and those at high risk of severe COVID-19 infection. Explain for our viewers why a third dose is needed for these groups, and can they still expect to get those doses right away?
So it is clear that a third dose is beneficial to anyone who has an impaired immune system. So that includes anyone who is older, and in this sense, we are saying anyone who's older than 65 and anyone who suffers immune compromise. So anyone whose immune system may not be working as well as it's supposed to. Any person taking chronic steroids, any person who has autoimmune disease, etc. It is clear that these vaccines do not mount as robust a response in patients who have a poor or a lower immune system. And because of that, it is absolutely clear that a third shot helps prevent serious, significant COVID illness in this population. And that's, I think, why you saw a clear recommendation that there will be boosters rolled out for anyone who fits that description. They also rolled in people who are high risk and chronically exposed to the infection, and that includes healthcare workers who are on the front lines and other frontline people who are constantly being exposed to high levels of COVID infection.
So help us understand if this is a delay while they look at more data, or if this is the end of the line and means that the general population should not plan on getting booster shots. What would you advise your patients?
So I would tell my patients quite clearly, you are going to need a booster at some point in time. The timing of that booster is unclear. And part of what the data is showing us is that 2 doses of the mRNA Pfizer or Moderna vaccine are highly effective, and highly effective 6 months out, in preventing hospitalization, severe disease, or death from coronavirus. And that's what we want vaccines to do. What they aren't is they aren't perfect. And we knew that going in, but that became very clear with the Delta variant and this recent surge of infections across the United States. So quite clearly, we do not have a vaccine that's been accepted by everybody in the United States, and therefore we have people who are unvaccinated next to people vaccinated, and we've seen continued spread of this disease, including spread of coronavirus to some people who are fully vaccinated. What we are not seeing is severe disease, or hospitalization, or death in those populations. In fact, quite significantly, the only patients that we've seen get very sick with coronavirus who are vaccinated are elderly or patients who have some sort of compromise to their immune system. And again, that's why those patients are now being recommended for their 3rd dose or their booster dose. But I think if I was a betting woman, I would say that we're all going to get recommended for our booster at some time in the future. As it's been pointed out, there are many vaccines that have a 3-vaccine course. This is somewhat to be expected. And I kind of want to maybe ease some of that messaging to patients and people who are really getting confused and just having a hard time trying to follow, who's saying what. Right now, we're going to give boosters to a certain, or I expect us that we'll give boosters to a certain part of the population who are more at risk, but eventually everyone's going to be in line for their 3rd dose to make sure that we have long-lasting immunity and safety against this virus.
That's the top line summary of all of that. You did mention the data, and a new CDC study compared the effectiveness of the 3 authorized COVID vaccines in the U.S., and it found that Moderna is the most effective at preventing hospitalization, then Pfizer, and then Johnson & Johnson. Practically, what do those results mean, and should people be concerned if they got one of the less effective shots?
So I think clearly Moderna and Pfizer are very similar, 88% versus 93%. I'm not sure that even really means too much of a difference to me. And they are both the same type of vaccine. So I think if you got an mRNA vaccine, you can pretty much consider them to be equivocal. The numbers for Moderna are a little bit higher. The number of antibodies that Moderna seems to result in the body seems a bit higher. But they are pretty much equal. I think the Johnson & Johnson data being, 71% is more concerning, and I expect that we will be seeing recommendations for a Johnson & Johnson vaccine booster to be rolled out along with our mRNA vaccine boosters and to help address some of those issues. I don't think anyone should be terribly concerned because realistically, if you are vaccinated, you have really done everything possible now to protect yourself from getting seriously ill with coronavirus. And unequivocally, in our hospitals, in our emergency departments, we are not seeing patients who are vaccinated with normal immune systems get seriously ill with this disease. So if you are vaccinated, I think you should have a large sense of comfort. And I know that when differing numbers come out, it makes everyone have some anxiety. But I think in general, if you are vaccinated, you have done a long way to keeping yourself and your loved ones safe against this virus. And we will continue to watch the data and recommend future boosters as the data implies.
Dr. Fairbrother, I want to read a statement coming from the White House regarding COVID booster shots. It said, quote, "Today was an important step forward in providing better protection to Americans from COVID-19. We stand ready to provide booster shots to eligible Americans once the process concludes at the end of next week." What's your reaction?
I think we'll be giving boosters to patients who are 65 and older and immunocompromised and frontline health workers. Really, any of those populations that have had their second shot more than 6 months ago, I think we're going to be seeing all of those patients and those populations be given a booster in the next couple of weeks. That's my prediction. As to, from there, for everyone else, boosters for younger patients, for people who do not fit in those categories, I think time will tell. But I think that we'll get there. It is hard. It is hard to interpret all of this data and to see different countries doing different practices. But I do believe in the science, and I think the science has shown that our vaccines are protecting people against this disease. They are protecting against hospitalization and death from coronavirus. And we can feel safe and secure in that and get our boosters when it is recommended that we do so.
All right, Dr. Hilary Fairbrother, thank you for joining, and thank you for all that you do.